So IndieSource is a full package manufacturer, which means we actually handle buying all of the fabric and the materials for you. But sometimes we have brands that have already sourced their materials and they want to send it to us. And oftentimes what happens is they send way too much fabric or not even close to enough fabric to fill the order. If they send too much fabric, they've tied up their cash in fabric, so that's not a good idea. And if they undership and they don't send enough, then we can't produce what's on their purchase order and their prices go up, the costs go up because we're making less. So today I'm going to talk about 5 ways that you can make sure that you don't ship too much or too little, that you order just the right amount of fabric for your production. All right, so number 1 is make your markers first. So by completing your marking and grading, you'll know exactly how much fabric you really need. Oftentimes people will use just their pattern, their base pattern as a reference, but you won't get the big picture. So make the marker first and you'll get a yield that'll tell you exactly how much fabric you need to order. Now, there's 3 things you need to do to get your marker. The first is you have to identify the number of units you're making for each style. And you have to give that to the person making your marker. Number 2 is the width of the fabric. And then the third thing are your actual graded patterns. If you have these 3 things, what you can do is send that to the team making your marker, whether that's us or someone else, and they can produce a yield for you based off of your actual order quantity. So that's number 1, make your markers first. All right, the second thing is shrinkage. The more fabric shrinks, the more you use up, right? So you want to ask the fabric vendors if they have any information about the shrinkage of the fabric that they're buying, right? Now, not all fabric vendors are going to give this to you, but it's always good to ask if they have done any prior testing on the fabrics that you're ordering. If you don't have that, what you can do is you run a shrink test, and we will do a video on that later. But a shrink test tells you how much the fabric is going to shrink before you go and order it. Number 3, order enough to make at least 10% above what you need. So because there are losses when fabric arrives and cutting and then the sewing process, there's always going to be some damages in different loss areas. So you want to order roughly 10% above what your purchase order is to make sure that you have enough fabric. It's a good standard, but you also need to incorporate shrinkage, and different fabrics kind of have different rates of error, so you might want to consider that. But that's a good baseline for what to overshoot in terms of your order. So number 4 are damages. So garment production is high risk because one small thing that happens, the fabric runs or there's a hole poked in it, and now you can't use it, or it's a second. So when doing hundreds or thousands of garments, there's going to be a small percentage of damages at these different stages. It's important to account for this as well. And then the 5th thing is knowing whether you're doing solid colors or stripes or another kind of print that actually will waste more fabric. Solid colors will always be the best utilization. If you're doing solid, you don't have to worry about lining up stripes in a certain place or pinning things down or having a certain print in a certain location. So if you want to use fabric more efficiently, you want to use solid colors. And of course, the last note that I will say in terms of colors is when you're deciding on what you're going to produce and you're cutting, make sure that you can produce the same fabrics in a couple of different colors and cut them at one time. If you use different fabrics, you have to make a different marker because they're going to react differently. And then the final note is when you're deciding on your sizes, it's important to use what's called a sizing ratio. So what that means is, give you an example. You might do 100 small, 200 medium, 200 large, and 100 XL. That would be a 1-2-2-1 sizing ratio. So what this does is it allows you to use the fabric better, to not waste, and to create a ratio so that you don't have so many of one size and not enough of the other. It allows you to make sure that we're using the fabric perfectly. That would be it. Those are the 5 things in order to make sure that you're using your fabric effectively, not ordering too much, not ordering enough. And again, if you don't have any of this, it doesn't matter, but we wanted to give you the tools so you have them anyways. If you have the materials, give us a call and we can work with you on sending the right amount.